words. I just threw them all up so you're going to see what we're going to look at. Basically, we're going to look at the word business, corporation, employed, employee, employer, employment, individual, legal representative, officer, person, salary, wages, and taxpayer. We're going to look into these words before we read the Income Tax Act first so we can understand what these words are saying. The reality of it is, just with this few words, you don't even get past Section 2 of the Income Tax Act before you realize it had nothing to do with you in the first place. Okay, and this is actually one of the few acts that actually has the definition section hidden way in the back. Go figure why. So we're going to draw a picture here. What does the Income Tax Act actually say? Section 248 is the definition section, and these are the most important words in that definition section in this act. So when we look at words, that's what they mean in this act. That's not what they mean on the job or over there, but that's what they mean in this act and out of the mouths of anybody who speaks with authority from this act. Okay? First word we're going to look at is business. I'm going to draw some little pictures here to give you a visual of how this works. Now, I like the word business here because when you look at it, there's a couple reasons why they even have to put the word in the act. Business includes a profession, calling, trade, manufacture, undertaking of any kind, whatever. Is that not broad? Okay, I mean, that's just basically, I look at it as like going to the bathroom's an undertaking of any kind, you know. It even has paperwork. Maybe we're taxed on that, right? But think about it too. I mean, when you look at it, is doing nothing an undertaking of a kind? You see, so why did they use, well, here's why, because business in law has no definite or legal meaning. It's a neutral word, so whenever it's being used, it has to actually be defined to give it some meaning. Okay, but what they did is they said business means basically anything and everything you can do, and then it goes on to say, and in the nature of a trade, but does not include an office or employment. So you're seeing the reverse use of the word includes. They said business includes everything, but does not include this circle and this circle. So they actually used it to be able to use it and pull these 2 points out. Okay, so we're going to be looking at those two words as we go. So we're going to look at a business. We're going to look at this other word, corporation. What's the natural and ordinary meaning of the word corporation when we use it just talking on the streets? Is McDonald's a corporation? IBM? We use corporation. We think everybody's talking about an incorporated company. Remember what happened, though, in federal statutes. Corporation in federal statutes means artificial person. So because they wanted to mean just the incorporated company, corporation includes an incorporated company to restrict it, just which is one type of many artificial persons. It's funny because we were talking to this tax attorney, actually, a person just passed law school, so they're just brand new and focused, specialized in tax. So we're talking about definition. I said, well, why'd they put the word corporation in there? You know, it just says what we normally think it means. He goes, oh, just for clarity, just to remind us. Okay, if that's what you're taught, good. Okay, but keep that thought in there. If they're going to put this in there, just to remind us, just for clarity, keep that thought because we're going to need that premise to look at other words. Okay, we're going to move on in there. In this act, employed means performing the duties of an office or employment. So what we have here is we have an incorporated company. What we're trying to find is, are we in here as natural persons? And so in this act, to be employed means you're performing the duties of an office. Whoops. Oh well. Or employment. Now, we're going to have to dissect them, but think about the language now. CCR phones you up and says, are you employed? What did they just say to you? Did they say, are you working for somebody? No, they asked you when they say, are you employed or have you been employed in the last year or whatever they ask you, what they're asking you is, they said, are you performing the duties of an office or employment as defined within this act? Okay, so it becomes very restrictive. So basically, I know who I am and I know who he is. He's been unemployed for I don't know how many years. See, I have not been performing the duties of an office or employment. So unemployed, not employed, whatever you want to call it, means you're just not doing that. It doesn't mean you're not working. Okay? Now, what's an employee? It includes an officer. So if you're a business person, CCR phones you up, do you guys have any employees? What did they just ask you? Do you have any officers there? Because if you do, we want to track them. Okay, so we draw our picture more and we say, okay, if an employee, where was the only other place we saw the word employee? CPP Act. That's about the only place you'll see it within that. So it should make sense. We'll put the officer in the office. Okay? Makes sense. Let's go a little bit deeper. What's an employer? Okay, normal meaning of employer is someone who hires somebody else, right? You're an employer when you have someone babysit your kids or someone cut your yard, technically, right? But in this act, when they use the word employer, means in relation to an officer, means the person from whom the officer receives remuneration. So if you're even if you're an incorporated company and you got a relationship to one of these officers, you've hired them, you are then within the act an employer. But what if you broke these relationships and went under private agreements with a bunch of natural persons? Would there be a relationship to an officer? Then would you be even classified as an employer under that act? Okay, well then would you be required to do payroll? Keep payroll records? You see, what payroll records really are is because you're taking the benefit of using one of their government officers, they want you to track so they can make sure they take care of their benefit. That's all payroll records are. Payroll records over here is just between the two parties. Okay, and if you're deducting something from one of these officers and you're not remitting it to the government, that's a trust account. It's money you should have had, and they want it right away. Let's look at this word employment. What's employment? Normal meaning just means you're out there working. Remember, it actually was something different in the CPP Act, but in here they've even narrowed it. Employment means the position of an individual in the service of some other person, including Her Majesty or foreign state or sovereign, and servant or employee, which are synonymous, which is really the same thing, means the person holding such a position. So when we look at that, it means the position of an individual. Now our mind should have gone individual. I wonder if that means a natural person. But when we even read on within it, we can realize that individual is used in different contexts. The position of an individual, which is a singular, in the service of some other person, and servant or employee means that person or that individual holding such a position. So in employment, there's only two things that can be employed, is the servant or the employee. We already know the employee is the officer. That only leaves the servant over here. And what you're going to see really is even inside the box there's a duality within the box. And we can relate to that in life as it goes. And there's really only one entity under this whole Income Tax Act. How about this office in this act? Office. Okay, now what's the normal meaning of the word office? What, 9 by 12, picture window, a couple rubber tree plants, you know? Well, in this act, it doesn't mean that. In this act, an office means the position of an individual, entitling the individual to fixed or ascertainable stipend or remuneration. So it's a position held by one of these persons, an officer or a servant. And includes, see, they know how to use includes in the proper point, and includes a judicial office, the office of a minister of the Crown, the office of a member of the Senate or House of Commons of Canada, a member of the Legislature Assembly, a member of the Legislature or Executive Council, and any other office, the incumbent of which is elected by popular vote. Have you been elected? Or is elected or appointed in a representative capacity, and also includes the position of a corporation director, comma, and, which is a compound sentence, and officer means a whole person holding an office. So basically, I don't care what you call it, it still is an officer holding that office. So however you spin it, there's only one entity here, it's the officer. All a servant is, if you look at it, is an officer is basically an employee of a servant is your self-employed. So here's your T4 world, and here's your T4A plus your self-employed world. Okay, but they're still both under a contract with service with the federal government for CPP. Okay, they're still federal government entities, employment. Okay, now, so we look at this, the act, it has the word person redefined. So are we in here? Now, remember what the tax attorney said, why they used the word corporation in there? Just to remind us. Well, don't you think they would have just put the word natural person in here too, just to remind us? So let's look at it, see if we're in under the definition of person. Person or any word or expression descriptive of a person, comma, includes any corporation. Well, that's not us. And any entity exempt because of section 149(1) of the tax under part 1 of all or part of the entity's taxable income. Well, that's your churches, charitable donations stuff, so that's not us. Okay? And the heirs, executors, administrators, and as a connective to this, okay, those three, or as a break and start of a new sentence, or other legal representatives of such a person. Now, we look at this on the surface and go, legal representative, well, that's lawyers and stuff, so we're not lawyers, so that's not even us. But if we slow down and say, well, what if maybe we should check all these words and see if we can find a different meaning? And what if we're a legal representative of such a person? When you look at that is, if you're a legal representative of this person, then you are not the person itself, but you're somehow connected to that person. So let's look at this word legal representative. Legal representative of a taxpayer. So right there it shows you, is the legal representative the taxpayer? No. It's a legal representative of the taxpayer, means a trustee in bankruptcy. That's not us. An assignee, that's not us.